Malcolm Moran has covered sports for nearly 30 years for outlets like the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, and USA Today. Currently, he's the night chair in sports journalism at Penn State. And Friday, I got a chance to talk with Malcolm about the Nittany Lions, the legend of Joe Pa, and a funny story about Coach Bryant. Malcolm, like Alabama, there has been a fierce quarterback competition at Penn State. Joe Pa's not said yet who is going to start, but I know there's been a lot of discussion among the fans and the media. Is there a clear-cut leader at this point?
I really don't think there is, and I think there still, even though this would be a relatively late date to wait for someone to emerge, I think they're waiting to hear something that happens that creates some separation. It's a really interesting situation to have programs with this kind of history and expectations meeting each other at this point in the season with so much uncertainty at the quarterback position.
No question that Joe Paterno has reached legendary status. For those of us who have never had the pleasure of meeting him, what is he like in person?
Well, for one thing, very down to earth. He used to come out every Friday night before home games to the reception that would take place for the visiting reporters coming to town. And I really miss those days because it was all considered off the record. There was hardly any conversation about football at all. I mean, he would probably ask you, if you came to one of those receptions, he'd want to know what you've read lately, and he'd want to know where you went to high school, because I'm convinced that he knows somebody from every high school in America. I mean, you could have gone to high school in Nome, Alaska, and he could talk about a recruit that he didn't get in 1958. And so that's what it was like to get a chance to spend some time with him on a personal level, and you could see the depth of interest that he has. I mean, obviously, football is the most high-profile part, but it's just one part of the things that he's interested in.
And this is actually not the first time that you've rubbed elbows with coaching legends. You once actually got to interview Coach Bryant here in Tuscaloosa. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, it was early in the '79 season, which wound up being a championship season. The Tide had opened at Georgia Tech and then had a bye week. And so I drove over from Atlanta and was fortunate enough to get some time with him, and I was able to get a little extra time than I would have been able to get had there been a game that Saturday. And yeah, the first thing that you would notice is that when you sit down on the couch in that office, you just keep going until your view of his face is literally just of his face. You wouldn't see much below his chin. And you're peering up over the front edge of the desk. And the interesting thing about it is that the way that he projected in person was completely different than the way he projected over the phone. And I didn't know that at the time because that was my first year at the New York Times, and frankly, I didn't know much of anything at the time. And so I discovered to my horror that although he was welcoming and friendly and he was volunteering stories and we laughed, and I had no idea what he was saying. I mean, I probably understood 1 out of every 10 words. And I parenthetically mentioned, you know, sometimes editors raise questions like after you file a story, if anything comes up that I need to clarify, would you mind if I gave you a call? And he said, oh, that wouldn't be a problem, sure. If you need anything, just call. And so a couple of days later, I called back and basically asked all the same questions. And this time, since when he spoke on the phone, it was perfect. I mean, it was perfectly clear. You could understand every word. And so I basically asked him everything that I had asked him the first time, and things worked out okay. But it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this final question. How does the game play out on Saturday?
I think this has to do here at the Penn State end with a lot more than simply Alabama as an opponent. And I think what this game represents to Penn State is a chance to deliver a sense of validation that has been missing for the last couple of years. I mean, I think Penn State's best chance, given the quarterback situation on both sidelines, is that I think the Lions were holding some things back defensively last week in the game against Indiana State. I mean, I see between the health issue and the fact that people that were not healthy last year seem to be healthy now, and the fact that there seem to be some newer people that could prove to be very capable backups, that they'll have a chance to rotate a lot of people in and out at different positions and make their mark defensively. The kicking game should be improved over last week because of some personnel issues that have been resolved. And for all the talk about the quarterbacks, I think on the Penn State side, the mission of the quarterback, whether it's Bolden or McGloin, is not going to be to win the game. It's going to be don't lose the game.